So I'm going to rap for you guys. Just kidding. I am not. I am not going to rap. So I think a lot of you here know Kayla and I have two boys, or sons. Rio, who's 3.5. Aurelio is 1.5. And they're a lot of fun. They're very chaotic, but they're sweet boys. And Rio has two favorite toys. His first is literally whatever he sees his younger brother Aurelio playing with. He loves it. Rio can be all in playing with like Spider-Man or like a dinosaur or a truck, but he can see Aurelio pick up like a busted Lego piece, and Rio's like locked in. And something in his little toddler brain says he will never taste happiness again until he gets this Lego piece. His second favorite toy, which I think is legitimately his favorite toy, is this Paw Patrol spaceship. It's objectively pretty cool. It's got lights, it makes noise, it like flips up, it shoots these little like blue discs. It's a really cool toy. So last week, Kaylee and I and the boys, we were at Red, White, and Blue. Do you guys know what this is, Red, White, and Blue? Yeah. This is a thrifty bunch. You guys know what Red, White, and Blue is. America. So we were at Red, White, and Blue. The one we go to, they have a toy section in the back right corner. And like we know, like Rio is going to make his way over there. So we lay out some ground rules. Say, all right, look, we can get you a toy, but if we do, you have to give away a toy from home. It's the ground rule. So he's like, all right. So eventually he makes his way over there, and the toys back there, like for the most part, are not like lightly used. These things have some miles on them. And he locks in to this pretty big pirate ship. And you look at it closer, and it's got pieces missing. It's got kind of broken. It's being offered for like $3 plus 75% off or something. Like they're just trying to get this thing out the door. Like, please take it. But he sees it and he's like, I want this. And Kaylee and I look at each other. We're like, no, this is not about to happen. So we're like, all right, we can get that for you. But if we do, you have to give away your Paw Patrol spaceship. Yeah. He might have therapy later because that's very manipulative. But we were like, you got to give it away. And he looks at the pirate ship and he's like, okay. And we're like, no. It's like you have to give away your favorite toy and you like can't get it back. Like it's gone for good. And he's like, okay, I want this. We're like, no. You don't want that. Rio was convinced that this janky pirate ship was worth trading in his actual favorite toy. Luckily, we were able to distract him with another toy, and he fixated on that, so he didn't have to give it away. But in that moment, he was willing to make that trade, convinced that what he had in front of him was better. See, the beginning of the series, of this series on the Sermon on the Mount, we discussed the Beatitudes. And this is a preamble for a message that urges us to reorient our desires and our priorities so that we can experience the good life. A good life where it's not the wealthy and the powerful that are blessed, but the poor in spirit, those that mourn, the meek. And throughout his message, Jesus is describing who and what to pursue while offering cautions about what can distract us from the good life. However, in this passage in Matthew 6, Jesus is warning us that there are things in life that don't just distract us. They're not Aurelio playing with a toy that distracts us. But there are many idols that claim our allegiance away from Jesus. There are $2 broken toy pirate ships that look so good to us that we'll trade in our Paw Patrol spaceship. We can't serve two masters. We can't have them both. If we're truly to be kingdom people, hungering for righteousness, pure of heart, merciful, peacemakers, willing to be persecuted, we have to find the ways in which not just our attention, but our allegiance is divided, so that we can truly seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. The good life is a life of undivided allegiance and full submission to Jesus. So how do we do that? How do we truly seek first his kingdom? So the passage may not be fully clear on how exactly we do that, but Jesus does mention two major obstacles: a love of money and worry. So just don't love money and don't worry, right? That's easy. Simple, straightforward. Got it. I'm done here. How are we supposed to not worry about our life? How are we supposed to root out all unhealthy attachment to money, this thing that's kind of essential for daily living you might want to do? How do we truly seek first his kingdom in the way that Jesus is describing? Well, based on the passage, maybe step one is root out a love of money. Now, with this group, a ton of people just accumulate stuff for exploiting the poor for material gain. It's kind of the antithesis of what we do here. But that doesn't mean that the love of money can't help reveal where a deeper problem might be. So in this passage, there's a few verses that jumped out to me as a little bit different. We talked about them a little bit right up front. Verses 22 and 23, and I think they'll pop up on the screen. And these aren't so different, but there's something about them that just did jump out to me, and I keyed in on it a little bit. And they say this: the eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body would be full of light. If your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body would be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? So I definitely went down a rabbit hole when I was trying to study these verses. And I keyed in on the words healthy and unhealthy. And the Greek word there used for healthy is haplous, which literally means without folds. Odd. It's often used to mean single or simple. Okay, that might make a little more sense. See, then I stumbled into the King James version of this verse, which actually says this: if thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. But if thine eye be evil, thy whole body shall be full of darkness. Was still a little bit strange because single is not a synonym for healthy and evil is not an antonym for single, but that's the way they're lined up in that passage. Now, I mentioned before that Tim Mackey of the Bible Project actually has a really cool explanation of this about how this is a figure of speech. A healthy eye, like I mentioned, is generous. Unhealthy means stingy. Certainly makes total sense in this passage. And I did mention that I think there is a deeper meaning, and one of the things that really kind of opened this up for me when I was wrestling with this and praying about this is a verse in James. It's James 4:8 that says this: come near to God, and he will come near to you. Wash your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. That word double-minded. This verse in James kind of echoes one of the Beatitudes that we studied. Blessed are the pure in heart, purify your hearts, for they will see God. Come near to God, and he will come near to you. Double-minded. See, I think this concept helps reveal the connection between the love of money and worry. If the good life is a life of undivided allegiance and full submission to Jesus, it's not just about money. Jesus is warning us about anything that can divide our minds, divide our hearts, and ultimately claim our allegiance away from God. And this matters because Jesus tells us, like we mentioned, you will love one and you will hate the other. You will be devoted to one and despise the other. And like I mentioned, I don't think this is hyperbole. And I'll tell you why. So I grew up a huge baseball fan. Don't tune out. I know I brought up sports. Stick with me. A huge Atlanta Braves fan. Love that team. I memorized their lineup. I knew all the players. I knew all the coaches. I cried as a kid when they lost in the World Series in the 90s. Like, I cried myself to sleep that night. Like, I was a huge Braves fan. And a couple of years ago, one of my best friends started working for the Philadelphia Phillies, another professional baseball team, somewhat of a rival to the Braves, and had a pretty prominent position in the organization. And when he got that job, I was like, oh, well, I'll be a fan of both. I like the Braves, and I like the Phillies. It's cool. And that kind of worked. Like, during the regular season, they're playing other teams. Sometimes they meet up, and it's like, oh, there's a little bit of tension there. But this is fine. I can do this. But then they met in the playoffs, where the stakes are a little higher. And I actually went to a game in Atlanta, Braves versus Phillies, sitting next to my best friend's girlfriend, his mom, the Phillies players' family. And it was very clear to me, oh no, I can't be a fan of both. That's not going to work right now. What's good for the Braves is bad for the Phillies. What's good for the Phillies is bad for the Braves. I've got to choose. I can't be a fan of both. See, at a certain point, these two treasures that you love will come in conflict with each other, and they can't both win. So what are the treasures that I'm talking about? Well, let's bring it back to money. Have things ever been a little bit tight financially? What happens in your heart?
What's the opposite?
That might resonate with this group. What happens in your heart when the car breaks down? or you're hit with an unexpected medical bill, or you lose your job. In those moments, money can start to feel a little bit more like a savior than we'd like to admit. We start to worry about our life a little bit more, and maybe even ask the question, is this life of service and sacrifice actually the good life? Or maybe you don't struggle with loving money. Maybe it's not even so much your life that you worry about. Maybe it's your kids, or your ministry, or your reputation, or your legacy, or your untapped potential, or an election. These are all things that you should have some level of concern for. This is not a stress message. I'm not saying problems don't exist when you have enough faith. But the question is not, should I care about these things? The question is, do I trust Jesus with these things? Are you saying all the right things and outwardly showing mercy, but deep down you're still holding on to the hurt? Will you act on whatever God asks of you, as long as you have certainty? Certainty can be an insidious idol. Or maybe you're the opposite. Your sense of the good life is constant adventure and spontaneity. And it's your vision of the good life that is from hearing God actually calling you to sit still and just hear his quiet voice. Do you trust Jesus with your money, your kids, your reputation, your ministry, this election, and ultimately, do you trust Jesus with your life? Do I trust what Jesus says about the good life? Or do I want to rely on my wisdom for what I think the good life is? So Kaylee and I and a group of us went to Manila earlier this year, to the Philippines. And it was such an impactful experience for us for so many different reasons. It's just the people are so faithful in the midst of suffering and pain. They are so joyful and generous despite deep, deep poverty, one that I had never been around before. And you can't help but go away from, to leave an experience like that, but to like re-inspect some things in your life and in your heart. I certainly did. And one of those things was to re-inspect my relationship with money. See, I come from a background of having a ton of financial privilege. My parents are both doctors. They're retired now. We really didn't lack any material thing. We certainly didn't flaunt our money, but like if we wanted something, we probably got it. And by the grace of God, like I'm not a person now that has an over concern or a desire to just like accumulate stuff. I really don't have that desire. And for, you know, when I think about like I don't buy myself new clothes. I work in an industry where like $1,000 watches. This was like $15 on Amazon. I'm cool with used cars. Like we drive used cars. Like, and again, I come from a background where like if you drive a car past like 100,000 miles, people are like, does it still run? Is it safe? and again, the grace of God, like I'm not like that. And there's some pride in me that like I don't have that. And for so long, I'm like, no, I don't love money because look at where I come from and where I am now. I don't love money. But then I went to Manila. Got me. And you've got people living on $2 to $3 a day and abundantly generous. Like I can't even, like words will fail me to describe the level of generosity. Like the poor widow dropping her 2 pennies in the bowl, like type generosity. It's incredible. And I started to look back at my life and I said, well, there are some things here that maybe I need to be concerned about. Because although I didn't want to like accumulate stuff, I realized that my entire life I've had a safety net that I either stood on or that I knew was there, so I didn't have to worry. I went to college, had a partial scholarship, but not a full ride, and my parents finished the rest, paid for the rest. After that, I went and pursued a career in sports broadcasting, making peanuts, not very much money at all, kind of enough to pay my bills, certainly not enough to pay unexpected bills, but I knew if I had unexpected bills, they would get paid. My parents would be there. And now, again, I work in affordable housing, but I get paid really well. And I know my bills will be paid, and I know that unexpected bills can be paid when they come up. this financial safety net. See, for me, it's not about money. It's about security. A security that I've had my entire life, and I'm holding on to it way too tight. We live way below our means, well below our means. In fact, Kaylee and I are more generous now than I think we ever have. We've been together. But I can still feel it. The impurity in me, causing me to hold on to security way tighter than I want to. And when I don't recognize what's going on under the surface, when I don't repent and turn away from this idol, anxiety grows. I worry about my life more. It gets much easier to convince myself that the risks Jesus is asking me to take are unreasonable. They're reckless. Don't do that. I start to value earthly treasures more than heavenly ones. And before I know it, I'm reaching for a busted-up thrift shop pirate ship, choosing safety and comfort instead of the good life, where I follow Jesus' voice with reckless abandon. What's your busted-up pirate ship? What's the thing in your life that's trying to steal your allegiance from God? Is it money? Is it what money represents to you? Safety, comfort, security? Is it being liked? Is it being seen as proficient so you don't take risks into the unknown? Is it your kids? Are you willing to pursue justice when called by God, but you stop short because it might make your kids uncomfortable or even unsafe? Or maybe you're not grown. Your parents follow Jesus. Your friends say they follow Jesus. But you look at other kids who aren't submitted to Jesus and think, they look like they're enjoying life. They look free. Am I living the good life? Or are they? And I guarantee you there is more in their life than you see and more bondage than they realize. Double-mindedness, divided allegiance. What is it? When I have enough courage to look deeply into my soul, it reveals a question that sometimes I'm scared to answer. Do I trust God? Do I trust God to prosper me? And am I okay with a life that looks different from what the world would say is thriving? When I'm honest, sometimes I'm not sure if I can trust him, despite everything he's done for me. And this is an old problem. Take it in Genesis 3, not trusting God's promise to prosper us and relying on our own wisdom, which causes us to try to take for ourselves what God has offered us all along. I do seek God's kingdom, but I'm not pure in heart. And God doesn't want 90% of my life. He wants all of it. I can't serve two masters. And the really bad news is that these areas of our hearts, these depths of our soul, this deep-seated double-mindedness, we cannot purify our hearts in our own strength. Emily, if you want to come up. But here's the good news. As buried and as broken as those parts of ourselves might be, we can still receive the grace of God in the deepest parts of our being. When we're able to open up the depths of our soul with vulnerability of our double-mindedness to God, Jesus is waiting there with open arms. Not demanding an explanation, but running to us with an amazing grace that can turn our double-minded, impure heart into a singularly focused heart. Motivated by connection with God, transforming us into kingdom people by producing peace and patience and kindness and gentleness, the fruit of the kingdom. We just have to make the decision to release our grip on whatever we're holding on to. We have to decide that's where our perspective or our understanding is telling us to go against the call of Jesus. We must step back in faith towards our King. And this is what seeking Him looks like. It's not by seeking the fruit. It's by seeking the one who produces the fruit. We don't just force ourselves to not love money or convince ourselves that problems don't exist when you're a person of faith. We sit at the not to be reminded of how much we love God, but to be reminded of how much He loves us. And in a moment, we're going to do this together. So on your tables, there are these half sheets of paper. And maybe when I've been talking, something came up, something you're worried about, something you're anxious about. Or maybe you know what your $2 toy pirate ship from Red, White, and Blue is. Where is your allegiance divided? Security. For you, it might be comfort, or kids, or finding the next job, or allegiance to this country, or being in a relationship. What is it? And I want you to write that thing down on the piece of paper. And then once you do, I want you to ball it up, and I want you to hold it in your fist tightly. And I want you to continue to hold it in your fist. And then someone's going to come up and is going to lead us in communion, and I want you to continue through that, to hold on to this thing in your fist. And maybe your hand gets tired. Maybe even your forearm starts to hurt as you continue to hold on to this thing that Jesus wants you to let go of. And when you come to the table, I want you to release your grip. There'll be a bowl there where you can release this. I want you to drop this treasure on the ground or in the bowl and feel the relief of letting go of something Jesus doesn't want you to hold on to. And remember Jesus speaking these words, you don't have to worry. All these things will be given to you as well. And the call from Jesus to not worry is not a harsh rebuke. It's an encouragement. When you hear these words, don't hear them as a criticism of your lack of faith, but hear your heavenly Father reminding you how well he takes care of the birds and the flowers, things that mean absolutely nothing to him compared to how much he loves you. As you drop your paper, believe in your soul that you're not just releasing this earthly treasure, but you're trading it in for the good life. A life that can be lived with reckless abandon by our side. A life where we may look like fools to the world with our unending generosity, our disregard for safety or comfort. Allow the world to be shocked by our willingness to be insulted or even persecuted. But it's not met with an eye for an eye, met with sacrificial mercy in the name of Jesus. Be kingdom people. Undivided allegiance, full submission to Jesus. That's the good life.